Good afternoon everybody, and welcome back to Life and Hair. And you must excuse me because I've got yet another cold. I recovered from COVID over the Christmas period and here I am with another cold. But I needed to speak to you guys about the boost of awareness that female hair loss and alopecia has had over the last couple of days, ever since Jada Pinkett Smith was insulted in front of a global audience about her buzz cut due to having lost hair, having a diagnosis of alopecia which she had been trying to manage over these last few years. Now, I don't know much about it simply because I wasn't really following her story. I wasn't aware of what she was going through. But when I saw that scene of her basically being insulted as far as Will Smith was concerned, I really felt for her initially, because on this and other channels we have been talking so much about the shame and the stigma that are associated with hair loss for a woman. I know that male hair loss has been a very long-standing subject of scrutiny for a very long time. It takes on a different flavour and a different experience when it is a woman losing her hair, and she generally suffers from female pattern baldness, you know, with the umbrella term alopecia, under which there are many different categories of hair loss. But the end result is that we all are dealing with the same essential problem, is that as women, what they term our crown has been erased from our being. The way we present to the world is bare. It's bare in a way that is so difficult to describe and to explain. But we all know what it feels like. And for those of you who don't suffer with hair loss, you can imagine what it feels like. Imagine having some kind of a mark or a telltale sign about you that's very difficult to hide. We know that in the initial stages of hair loss, generally speaking, women will do their best to try and disguise it, you know, wearing certain hairstyles, dyeing your hair a certain colour that better matches your scalp skin colour in order to disguise it. I've spoken before about that feeling of dread. It's like a sinking feeling when you realise that somebody has clocked the hair loss and is paying closer attention. You know, when their eyes lock on to that area on your head that you really would prefer that they didn't pay any attention to. It's like squirming. It's like squirming under the scrutiny, under the attention, under that gaze. It's panic-stricken. It's wishing that the floor would open up and swallow you up. And alongside those fears and those anxieties are the more insidious feelings that eat away at you. The insecurity, it's such a horrible, horrible feeling. The vulnerability, where you feel that there's nothing that you can meaningfully do in order to defend yourself completely against such experiences. And oh my goodness, I really, really could put myself in her shoes. Imagine the horror when she realized that he was actually addressing this issue head on. Some people online say that he didn't know anything about her alopecia. He was merely addressing the fact that she'd shaved her head, basically. But she knew that she was suffering with the alopecia. And you know, you become hypersensitive to anything. Anybody talking about your hair loss is a big problem. it is kind of amplified in your mind. You know, even if it's like a throwaway comment that they're making, as far as you're concerned, they're calling attention. Everybody within earshot, hey everybody, look, let's look at this person's hair loss. Let's talk about this person's hair loss. Imagine a global audience, all brought, the attention of that global audience was brought to your head, to your hair, to your presentation as a woman, and that whole sort of business about being a queen of your femininity, your hair being your crowning glory. It represents fertility and stamina and virility and health and resilience. That's the word also, that it's bringing attention to your lack in all of those areas. I know that feeling, you know that feeling. And I really felt for that poor woman who was having to sit under that spotlight. It's like every person's nightmare, because I tell you what, if it's not regarding hair loss, it'll be regarding something else to do with you. Everybody can relate to this. Everybody knows what it must be like to sit under the scrutiny of an area where you're so clearly lacking in a very public way for all to see. I'm really loving this. By the way, I haven't mentioned what hair I'm wearing. I'm wearing my birthday present. Stephen said, what would you like for your birthday? And of course I said, I want Raquel Welch for my birthday. I've had my eye on Real Deal for a long time. This isn't a review of Real Deal, but I fully plan to do one. But what I absolutely adore about this, it's one of my beloved bobs. It's the blunt cut. Lots of layer, lots of body in the way that it's been layered, but then you also have that lovely blunt cut. Now going back to Jada, the horror continues, because not only is she suffering with alopecia, but she's also a public figure. I mean, she's famous. Anybody who's doing her hair, any makeup artist, anybody with a camera, everybody basically is there as a pair of eyes. How on earth can you keep something like this secret? You know, I wouldn't be surprised if she would have preferred to have kept it secret, but she thought, listen, I'm in the public eye. There's only so much secrecy I can maintain here. It's probably better for me to come out and talk about it. And I have seen clips on YouTube of her, you know, mentioning that she's managing alopecia. You know, and she does it with so much grace and so much style. You see, the thing is that she's a very beautiful woman. She's been a very beautiful woman all her life. All right, and this beautiful woman who's made her way to being a public figure and a success in her field, where her image, her beauty and her sexuality are the thing that is attracting the crowd. That's the thing for sale. You know, that is her unique selling point. I also happen to think that she's got a fabulous personality too. But for a woman like that, who's basically lived off her beauty to a certain extent, of course, mind you, even as a 50-something woman, she's still looking really fabulous for her age. For somebody who's ridden that pony for all of these years, suddenly then to actually be stripped away of an essential part of feminine beauty, that's very hard as well, you know. So she had tried to have some control over the disclosure of her alopecia, in owning it, in being the one to actually talk about it before anybody else does. But she could never have imagined that she'd be in a position like this, you know. And it's for this reason that I see where Will's behaviour must have been coming from, or may have been coming from. Of course, nobody knows what goes on in a private family home behind closed doors, and how a woman deals with losing her hair. All right, but as a woman who has been dealing with losing her hair, and I know that plenty of people watching this video, plenty of subscribers to this channel are also in that boat. And I get so many messages from women, so many messages saying, I'm so glad that I found your channel because it was music to my ears what you were saying. It made me feel that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't isolated. It took some of that panic and normalized things a little bit for me. If that's the case, I'm absolutely delighted. But I also know what happens behind closed doors. Now, you know, they seem to have a close, intimate relationship within this marriage. There's no way that Will Smith will not have been privy to her feelings of despair. Okay? And sometimes I'm sure that those feelings may even have spilt out to feelings of panic, to feelings of not wanting to go out, not wanting to be seen, worrying about how it's going to come across on camera, under lights, all sorts of stuff like that. And I'm sure that Will Smith and their two beautiful children will have tried their best to empower her in whatever way they could. They would have given her encouragement. They would have said, look, put it into perspective. You know, there's essentially nothing wrong with you. There are just a few strands missing. I mean, let's try and be objective about this. You know, only for everybody's nightmare to actually happen. Now, it's interesting that when Will Smith went up to Chris Rock, he didn't punch him, he didn't push him, he slapped him. He slapped him, you know, and there was a lot of very old-fashioned sensibility in that entire exchange, you know, because basically Will was doing an action to defend his wife's honor, you know, and in the same way that in the olden days a man would have taken out his glove and slapped the other guy in the face with the glove. Will Smith didn't have a glove, but if he did, I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he did. But he, with an open hand, slapped him. And you know what? It was so dramatic. It was kind of a whole upper body kind of thing. You know, he stabilized his balance with the one hand, and it was like a full swoop with the other hand. It's like everybody was, wow, did you just see what happened? There must have been a moment where Will Smith's desire to defend his wife's honor just kicked in, and he did what his instinct basically told him to do. Now, you know, I wouldn't even like to hazard a guess as to whether it was the right thing to do or not. But maybe Will Smith felt that it was something that needed to be done. Maybe he knew that her angst and pain and horror was so strong. He must have seen it in her eyes, you know, and having maybe been privy to all of the angst behind closed doors, it was kind of, no, this is not going to go down. We are going to face this head on, and I'm going to get up there and I'm going to act on your behalf, you know, act for your honor. Wow, there's so much tied up in female hair. You know, the whole concept of having to defend and protect it holding the feminine honor. You know, that there's so much tied up in this amazing thing that grows out of our head or doesn't. And you know, actually, it wasn't just the incident that happened and then everybody can now move on. Jada Pinkett Smith now is looking on at a world that is talking about her hair. The entire internet, YouTube, Google, the newspapers, magazines, people, you know, who work for Alopecia UK have been asked to give comments. Everybody is now talking about her hair loss. I mean, I can but imagine what that must be like. But kind of knowing the family as I do, they kind of have, you know, the red table talks, and they try and talk about those things that are not discussed. I can very quickly see how the family might actually use this as a vehicle to promote alopecia awareness and to take away some of that darn stigma that we've all had to live under. The tyranny of hair loss, the tyranny of judgment about what is or isn't on our head. You know, only the other day, you'll be interested in this, I know, if you're watching this video. I was watching a video about gypsy women, you know, the traveller women, and what their long hair represents. They all have long hair, you know, as past their bottoms as they can get it. And it is so valued, you know, their father and their mother lovingly brush the little girl's hair and watch it grow and stuff. And, you know, when she gets married, it's put up in all of this beautiful kind of beautiful arrangements, etc. I'd love to have hair like that. You all know the story of when I was a little girl, I used to put a pair of tights over my head, and then the two legs I used to drape over my shoulders and admire myself in the mirror and just imagine that they were my hair. You know, there is no doubt in my mind that if I had a choice, I would choose hair. I would choose to have long, thick, lustrous, wavy hair. I don't mind what colour it is. I've got my preferences, but I'll take anything. That's what I would choose. I mean, what I went through when my hair passed a certain stage of hair loss, it was a real conundrum I was in. I was properly experiencing serious dilemmas every day that had nothing to do with life at large, but had everything to do with what was I going to do that day regarding my hair loss? Is there anything I can do? Is there any colour I can dye it? Is there a hat? Is there a scarf, something that I can wear? And then, of course, you know, always comparing myself to the women that I was around, if it was a social occasion, and always feeling that really my entire presentation as a woman was really let down by the sparsity and the lack of vigor and the gender affirming I never thought I would use that word in this video, capability of hair, of lovely female thick lustrous hair, you know. And I understand that Jada Pinkett Smith simply didn't want to go out in a wig that night. She embraced the shaved look. She went for the shave. You know, and we all have that choice to make when we get to a certain stage of hair loss. How are we going to play this? Now, the thing is, she's very new age. She's very spiritual. She embraces her ethnicity and her natural hair. This is all what I've picked up by just looking at her presentation. What sort of thing does she choose to wear? The fact that, you know, she likes to discuss everything openly and speak about the spiritual and the self-growth aspects within life. I'm not surprised that she embraced the shave rather than kind of plonking a wig on her head. I have read a couple of articles where she was talking about even when she had hair, you know, enough hair, she was always being asked to straighten it and soften it and Europeanize it. And it went against what her own hair naturally liked to do. It wanted to be wild. It wanted to be curly and ringlety. You know, so there's a lot of history that's involved in that. There's a lot of identity that's involved in that. There's a lot of authenticity that's wrapped up in that. And my goodness, Chris Rock came along and actually insulted all of those things about that human being. It wasn't just her femininity, but let's look at the whole picture. Oh. You've got to admire her. You've got to admire her for being willing to front it out that night. She wanted to front it out, embrace the buzz cut, wear a fabulous dress that was edgy. It wasn't kind of your cliche, sexy dress, Hollywood thing. It had a high kind of collar, and it was kind of done up. It was form-fitting, but very tasteful and very edgy. And with the buzz cut, personally, I thought she looked utterly fabulous, you know. But even having done all of that, and even having fronted it out, thought it through, talked it through, had her breakdowns and her breakthroughs, made her decisions, even after she did everything she was supposed to do as a fully rounded human being, even after all of that, she was still put in that excruciating position that any woman with hair loss would absolutely dread. She still had to go through that. And on a very much smaller scale, ladies, don't we all go through that same journey? It's a smaller scale. We don't have the eyes of the world on us, but we all know what it's like when a brother-in-law, a friend, our partner, our children inadvertently say things that bring attention to our hair loss. And we all then have to face the music and try and reach into ourselves in order to find some way of keeping our head up and reminding ourselves of our value and not falling off a cliff with the despair of hair loss. I really wanted to address that in this video. I will be back very soon with another wig review because I've got a few to review now. But look, this is my very first Raquel Welch, and isn't she adorable? I look forward to seeing you again, and thanks very much for tuning in.